Welcome back. This is day 2 of Meltdown versus Boom. How will the 2024 real estate market end? And I'm going to start out by thanking the dozens of you who've gotten your names on the list for the new program that we are releasing probably the end of August. It's essentially a turnkey product, and it's a coaching program that's going to last 30 days, but the product itself is what we're really excited about. So we know that all of you have a lot of questions and fears in your minds about what you're going to be doing in preparation for the new rules as pertains to the real estate commissions. And so what Julie and I have done is we've created what will be, we think, the best product in the industry for you to give to prospective buyers to essentially act as your silent salesperson and resolve and answer all the questions that, frankly, some of you aren't really emotionally ready to deal with. For example, how commissions are being paid. Why should I hire you versus another buyer agent? How do you work with for sale by owners? How do you work with new construction? How do you, generally speaking, why is it that I'm going to be obligating myself to pay you 3% or whatever the commission might be? You guys get it? So what we've done is we've created something that's going to be 14 pages that's going to be in a folder that you're going to hand to folks. You can have it personalized if you'd like. We're making it so that you can. And this is going to essentially answer all those heavy lift questions that some of you are living in fear of ever having to deal with. And I get it. I mean, real estate, our entire careers, the buyer agent commission has always been essentially an entitlement to the transaction, essentially paid for as part of the transaction. And now what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to get the buyer to actually agree to pay you the commission. And it's not just an automatic entitlement that the seller is automatically going to pay. It's not just something, look in the MLS, see what the commission is. That is really going to cause a lot of consternation amongst a lot of you. And that's the reason we've created what we think will be something that's going to, frankly, save a lot of your bacons in a meaningful way.
Well, that's right. And it is not optional as it was before the commission lawsuits.
She means having the exclusive buyer agency contract signed is not optional. And if you've been listening to this podcast, you know what she's saying. Everyone's going to have to essentially have an exclusive contract signed. And part of that is going to be essentially explaining to the buyer how they are going to have to be obligated to pay for your services. Now, before you start, if this, for some reason, you've been living under a rock for the last 18 months, as all this has been brewing up, because Julie and I have been talking about the end of buyer agency as we know it, we think for 4 or 5 years, because we knew this, not the legal stuff, but we knew the conversations about this were going on for that long. That's the reason we've always geared you guys to become powerful listing agents. But obviously, being a powerful listing agent also means you're going to trip across a lot of great buyer leads, and a lot of those buyers are also going to have houses to sell. And so you're going to have to work with everybody, right? But here's the bottom line. You need to know how to compete and win in this market. And that's what this new program is going to be about. Now, we don't have it ready to release because, frankly, it's a tremendous amount of work, a lot of which Julie and I have to do ourselves. And so what we're doing is we're putting together a list. And that's what dozens of you put your names on yesterday, that list. And so if you want to be on the list, and you definitely want to be on the list, text the word buyer, B-U-Y-E-R, to 47372. Text the word buyer, B-U-Y-E-R, to 47372. And you're going to be on a list. And what we're going to do is, I think at the end of August, maybe September, like I said, beginning of September, we're going to be releasing this program to 100 agents. And those first 100 agents are going to be considered founders of the program. The program is actually called Ethical Real Estate Professional, and this is going to be Ethical Real Estate Professional Buyer Specialist. That's what this is going to be. And so you're going to be a founding member of that program if you're one of the first agents that essentially joins and becomes a member of it. This is a very comprehensive product. It's one of the biggest releases Julie and I have done since, I think, probably, maybe 4 years. And this is going to be something the industry desperately needs. I'm going to give you guys for example. Julie and I were noodling on an FAQ that we're building for it. And one of the conversations Julie and I were having after we've read and watched every video, read everything from NAR, read all these things from the Mortgage Bankers Associations, all these things from Fannie Freddie, you name it, we have consumed it. We are talking to some of the brightest minds in the real estate space. Like later today, we're interviewing the head broker for eXp Realty, Holly. And we're going to be asking her some of these tough questions too. We have gone to the end of the world and back to make sure that we're delivering you guys something that's going to really make it so that you're, rolling into this new reality of the buyer agent regarding the buyer agent commissions with enthusiasm and excitement, because you're going to realize what a great opportunity it is. But here's for example. Julie and I were noodling out yesterday with the help of others. How is it that we actually think a buyer side transaction will go? And this is what we really think. And we'd love to have you guys help us work through this. But we've been in the industry for 3+ decades, and we're actually maybe kind of good at what we're doing at this point. Julie and I sold literally thousands and thousands of homes. And the good news is this is not so different than the way it's always been done. But here's what we think. So we think when you're writing an offer on behalf of a buyer, it's going to become customary that the buyer is going to ask the seller for a concession to cover your fee in the purchase of the property as a concession. So there's going to be essentially something on a purchase contract that's going to list the seller concessions. A seller concession is something that's been paid for forever. Maybe the seller in the past was leaving the refrigerator, or maybe they're paying for the home warranty or that type of thing. Well, we think in the, obviously starting in a month, that we're going to see seller concessions that are going to be used primarily to pay for, buyer agent commissions. And that's fine. And in addition to all those other things. Now, that's the way it's traditionally been done. Anyone that's been in the business as long as us, you guys know that back when it wasn't a hot seller's market, it was normal for the buyer to ask the seller to pay some of their closing costs and whatnot. So if that doesn't work, if you're in a highly, highly competitive market, as most of you are, because we know most houses have 3 offers on them, that you're going to not be able to ask the seller to net less by paying the buyer agent commission, or the buyer's going to ask the seller to pay the buyer agent commission. So what we're going to then do is we're going to show you guys how to make it so that the buyer can finance the buyer agent commission. Now, this gets kind of complicated, and just hear me out, because there's 2 parts to this. And this is all the type of thing we're going to be teaching in this new program. So this is the reason I want you to be excited about it. So, Julie and I have researched this a lot. Anybody who wants to, fill us in on any missing pieces from what I'm about to say, we encourage you to do so. So you can, in a Fannie Mae Freddie Mac mortgage, which is basically every mortgage that's issued on planet Earth at this point, or at least in America, you can actually, on top of the appraisal price, finance in 6%. So what we think is going to happen in the situations where it puts the buyer at a disadvantage competitively for securing a house, but they still have the obligation of paying the buyer agent commission. What we think is going to happen is they'll simply agree, or they'll roll the buyer agent commission into the purchase of the property. So let's say the property's, $500,000, and the commission is, just making up numbers here. Let's say it's, what do you think, 15 grand, Julie?
Sure, that sounds reasonable.
Okay, so then they're going to finance, and let's just say they're going to, put down their down payment or whatever, but the purchase offer to the seller is going to be $515,000 with essentially, it's not really a concession on the seller's behalf because the buyer's paying it as part of their financing. Now, let's say you have a buyer, this is a first-time buyer, and let's say that they're really going to be tight on that mortgage and they're worried about their monthly payment, just all those types of normal things. Well, Julie and I did the math on this the other day. A 6% mortgage, I know rates are higher than that, but rates are definitely falling. At a 6% mortgage on a $450,000 purchase with, I think it was 20% down.
20% down.
20% down. The payment increased by $53 a month, right?
Okay, right. So just to clarify, that's the difference between if they financed it versus if they didn't finance it. The difference between a $500,000 purchase price and a $515,000 purchase price.
Right. So what I was giving them is the example that we did when we were working on it yesterday, when it was $450,000 purchase, right? Or a $450,000 purchase, and what the payment would be. So if you have a $450,000 purchase price and you put down 20%, and you also finance in the buyer agent commission, the mortgage balance obviously increases by the same percent of the buyer agent commission, and it equates to $53 a month, right? So if they were to finance in a normal buyer agent commission, it's going to increase their monthly payment at a 6% mortgage amortized over 30 years by $53 a month. So what we will coach you guys to do is we're going to show you how to make it so that the buyer agent or the buyer will agree to finance in your buyer agent commission, but it won't cost them any more because you're then going to credit back at closing from your commission, and this is all disclosed and perfectly legal. You're going to credit back at closing maybe 5 years worth of that extra $53, so roughly $600 times 5, right? So you're going to credit them back $3,000 at closing from your commission. In those cases where the buyer is not able to pay it themselves, where the seller is not willing to pay it, the fallback is going to be obviously finance it into the loan, and if the buyer's not willing to, make that extra payment to cover your commission, you can then agree to make the payment, or essentially give them at closing a credit towards what the extra amount will be on that increased mortgage balance because they're financing in your buyer agent commission. And this is all going to be disclosed. It's all going to be on the up and up. But here's the thing that's interesting, and I want you to think about what I just said. So your mortgages, Fannie Freddie, allow you to put 6% on top of the appraised mortgage value. So if the house appraises for $450,000, you can actually finance, and Fannie and Freddie will approve it, $450,000 plus 6%. Why does that mean that then hypothetically the buyer agent commission couldn't be 6%, couldn't be 5%, couldn't be 4%, couldn't be 1%, right? So it's very likely that buyer agents who've earned the extra fee, who are worth, in the eyes of their buyer, the extra commission, you're going to see the buyer agent commissions could actually increase, not decrease, because of this, from using the scenario I just said, especially if the buyer agent then is crediting back the buyer at closing the added, essentially monthly payment of what that would cost them. Maybe do it over 4 years, maybe do it over 3 years, maybe do it over 12 months. You guys get the idea. So that's the whole. There's going to be a million and one different ways to work this, but we do think, in most of the country, excluding the hottest markets, we do think it's very possible that the sellers are still going to be willing to pay the buyer agent commission as a concession to the real estate transaction. I actually want to go back and slightly at it. Even in a market where it's super hot, you can still obviously pay over asking for the purchase price. And that over asking could go towards covering the buyer agent commission. You guys get it? So historically, you can argue that the commission on the buyer agent side has always been an entitlement of the transaction that the seller paid. Well, the buyer is going to have to be essentially the one wrangling for how to get it paid, but it's still going to get paid. And Julie and I's noodling on this and talking with other people. It's possible that agents with skills that are worth it are actually going to be able to charge above market, above whatever is normal traditional market for their services in there because of the scenarios we just laid out. What do you think, Julie?
I think this is some really good news.
Yeah, me too.
Essentially, if you really want to boil it down, it comes down to several things. One is that unlike before, your buyer side commission has become a bit more negotiable, which means it's just one more of your negotiable points. You negotiate on price, on closing costs sometimes, who pays the warranty. Well, this is just one more of those potential concessions. But the good news is that you can go over the list price to finance it in. That wasn't done. Every now and then I think that there was a deal like that, but now that's going to become more normal.
Well, Julie just said something that's important. If you are, again, let's use a $500,000 house. If you offer the seller $500,000, actually $515,000, but 15 is going to be used as a concession towards the buyer to pay the buyer agent commission. Why would they say no? Their net's the same. So look, here's the bottom line. We're going to teach you guys how to do all of this, and we're going to give you a world-class marketing product to give to prospective buyers to make them want to work with you. Because at the end of the day, you're going to have to prove your value. You're going to have to explain to the buyer why you're the one that they should choose to work with. Before, buyers weren't that selective. Let's be honest. Buyers would just work with usually the first agent that they met because after all agents do the same thing. Well, in this marketplace where they're all going to be required, buyers are all going to be required to sign exclusive buyer agency contracts, you're going to have to give them a reason why they're going to want to sign it for you or with you. And that's what this new product is going to be about. You want to be on this list. Text the word buyer to 47372. Do that now. Do that right away. The first 100 agents that decide to partner with us on the launch of this new product at the end of August, beginning of September, they'll be founders, and you will have first advantage of, in your marketplace of knowing how to use this great new product. We're going to be we're going to be improving it dramatically over the next month or so before we put it in the marketplace. We've studied what everyone else is doing. Frankly, there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of confusion out there, a lot of information that's being written by people that clearly have never sold real estate before. If you want to, look at it, how it really appears to us. And so we know what you need. We're going to be delivering it to you. Get on the list now. Text the word buyer, BUYER to 47372. All right, now we're going to roll into point number 7, meltdown versus boom. How will the 2024 real estate market end? And this is day 2. Julie, point number 7.
Point number 7, inventory trends. This might be my favorite point. Here's the fact. National inventory is up a whopping 37% year over year, but still 30% below pre-pandemic levels, if you think back to about 2019, due to slightly stronger new listings and a slower sales pace. But again, the number to remember, up 37% year over year. What does the prediction as a result? Rising inventory levels may provide more options for buyers and potentially soften prices a little bit if demand doesn't keep up. So what does this mean to all of you? For years, a lot of our listeners have had lists and lists of buyers who would be in contract except for the fact they just couldn't find them anything to buy. Go back to those lists. Look at your inventory levels. I have coaching clients where the inventory in their market has tripled or quadrupled since about 2021, 2022. They are now getting their buyers in contract. And remember how many sellers that are would-be buyers were on the sidelines go after their listings as well. That's two
Two
transactions.
thoughts. Number one, that doesn't include new construction.
Correct.
And number two, year-over-year appreciation. Did you see this morning? Is or you can call it inflation or appreciation. It's the same as 6.5%.
Right.
So homes have still gone up by 6.5% this year. We're only halfway through the year. Can they go up by 10% or more this year? It's entirely possible. At the rate in which things are inflating or appreciating, it does look like that's the case. All right, Julie, point number 8.
Point number 8, average offers per sale. How many offers for each sale? Here's the fact. The average home sold in June 2024 received 2.9 offers. That's up from 2.8 in May, but down from 3.5 in June of last year. But you can figure it's basically 3 offers for every deal that closes. Here's a prediction. Fewer offers per home suggest reduced buyer competition, leading to a bit longer market times and more negotiating power for buyers. Again, we see the weight going towards the buyer side again. But still, 3 offers for every deal shows you pent-up demand as well.
I'm going to loop this back into the buyer product that we're creating. A market that's like what this one is becoming is very good for the sake of buyer agents getting paid, because sellers are going to realize they're going to have to be more agreeable to the concessions that the buyer is going to ask for after the middle of August, right? That's what's actually going to happen. So the tides are turning back in the favor of a very, very strong real estate market leading into next year. Hard to think about next year in the summer of this year, but the reality of it is that's what we're setting ourselves up for, is a very buoyant end of this year and into next year. It could be for a lot of you in a lot of markets, it's going to feel like a real estate boom again.
That's absolutely true. And in a similar way, point number 9 contributes to your same point, and that's days on the market. The typical home sold in June 2024 was on the market for 22 days. That's down a little bit from 24 days in May, but up from 18 days on the market from June 2023. Here's the prediction. An increase in days on the market could signal a cooling market, prompting sellers to be more flexible with pricing and, guess what? Concessions. This is all good as the pendulum swings a bit back towards the buyer side. It's great for you as a buyer's agent, and it's great for your buyers.
You're sitting in front of your seller. The seller says, I don't want to pay a buyer agent's commission. You're going to say, you know what? That's your decision. You can decide not to pay a buyer agent commission. Maybe they talked to some other agent that told them, gave them some misinformation, or somehow used the lack of the necessity to pay a buyer agent commission as an advantage to them, maybe trying to get the listing, whatever. So the buyer is saying to you, I don't want to pay our buyer agent commission. We're going to show you in this new program how to essentially explain to the seller or give the seller all the information so they can make the informed decision that's best for them. We are not, some people call us sales trainers, but we're not. We train you guys to be counselors. We train you guys to be consultants. That's really what we're gearing you towards, because that is a different mindset than someone's just trying to sell. Technically, selling is consulting, but for the sake of what I'm about to explain to you, think of yourself as a counselor or a consultant, okay? So, Mr. Seller, listen, I appreciate the fact that you want to pay a buyer agent, or you don't want to pay a buyer agent commission. Frankly, that's your decision. But I want to, okay, there's 2 ways you're going to approach this. First of all, you're going to explain to the seller how the seller can actually essentially the buyer agent can tack on their commission on top of the purchase price, and the seller still nets the same. So what difference to the seller does it make if the seller is technically paying the buyer agent commission through a concession? It doesn't really matter at the end of the day, because their net's the net. Most sellers are going to be happy with that, right? That's just the case. Now, if you get one for some reason that's really dug in or super, super analytical, and maybe they're both, here's what you're going to do. You're going to pull out market statistics. You're going to show them the last, 10 houses that have sold. You're going to pull out from those last 10 homes that sold, the actual sale price they sold for, any concessions they offered, including buyer agent commissions. And you're going to see, statistically, this just makes sense. The houses that had a better incentive to get sold are going to be the ones that sold for the least, days in the market, for the highest list to sell price ratio, if not over asking price. It might take the market 60 to 90 days to prove out with sales that show what I just said is true, but that's what's going to happen, because that's what always happens.
Of course.
Incentives rule everything in life. And the incentives, okay, now why would there be an incentive for a buyer to choose a house where the seller has already said they're willing to pay the buyer agent commission? Because the buyers had to obligate themselves in the exclusive buyer agency contract that every single buyer is going to be required to sign to pay that commission, right? So they're going to be carrying around the burden of having to make sure that buyer agent commission is paid. So if they're already walking into a potential listing where the seller says they're willing to pay it, don't you think that's going to be an incentive for them, especially if they really love the house? Of course it is. You guys following me on all this? So what you're going to do is you're going to consult, you're going to coach the seller to look at the statistics and make an informed decision on what's ultimately best for them and what's ultimately best for their bottom line and in alignment with what their goals are. That is the new set of skills, just a tiny, tiny bit of it that we're going to be teaching you in this new program. Remember to text the word buyer, B-U-Y-E-R, to 47372.
And remember, the script that you just went into, that sometimes I know you don't realize that you're doing a script, but you are. Those scripts are also included. We have updated, timely scripts that play into all of the presentation pieces so that you won't feel like you have to come up with any language on your own.
Yeah, we are having to rewrite all of this and write it new, but that's fine because we're actually kind of enjoying it.
Well, that's right. To take your example, the seller says, well, I hear I don't have to pay the buyer side anymore. The script is, well, that's true, you don't have to, but you could.
Right.
And here's why, A, B, C, D, and E. So that makes it a nice, smooth conversation.
What's truly shocking is, and Julie and I test this, we'll go out to the internets and we'll do a search as if we were a normal agent looking for an answer to something. And it is, especially with regards to what we've been sharing with you on this podcast and yesterday, impossible to find real factual information. It's so confusing. There's so much good information battling with bad information that the output's really, it's been a challenge for us to really learn more about how the mortgage regs work, to be honest. That stuff's kind of changing too. Well, it didn't change actually. Fannie and Freddie were always willing to have buyer agent commissions as a concession, as that part of the 6% on top of the appraised mortgage amount, but it was never very clear. But going through all that language and understanding it all in such a way that we can explain it to you, because it's one thing for us to explain to you, dear agent. In some cases, your broker, your office manager, your team leader is going to be confused and not know the facts. So we have to be really drilled down, delivering you guys something that's going to be state of the art. So text the word buyer, B-U-Y-E-R, to 47372.
Well, you make a good point about their broker, potentially their office manager, their team leader. Don't forget the other agent that they're dealing with also may need some education on this.
That's honestly, that's where the big pain in the ass is going to be. And we can have a completely trained up, educated, confident agent. And what you guys are, especially on the listing side, where really I think now both on the listing and buyer side, you're going to have to be spending a lot of time educating the other side. And again, that's the whole benefit of this package we're creating for you that's going to be part of the ethical real estate services, ethical real estate professional designation, is we're going to give you something that you can obviously use for your potential consumers, your clients, but we're also going to give you something, we're going to educate you on how you can educate the other agents. We're actually going to give you sample buyer agent contracts. We're going to give you sample listing contracts. We're going to give you all the things that you need to know so that you're leading your marketplace with this, frankly, all the information that everyone's going to need to know, because the natural reaction of everyone, and it makes sense, is everyone hates change. Where there hasn't been this kind of change in the real estate industry, I think probably since really the real estate crash.
I would agree with that.
As far as what's going to require as far as re-education.
100%. But all of you can have confidence, especially with this new package we're providing for you. You can have confidence, and we want you to be the leader. We want other agents in your marketplace to look at you and say, hey, you know what? I'm so glad that I have an offer from Tim because I know he knows how to put a deal together.
Well, Julie, imagine if you're on a listing presentation and your buyer or your seller is obviously going to be confused.
Sure.
And let's say you're competing, and let's say there's other listing agents or other prospective listing agents weren't very effective at explaining the ramifications of these changes, but you are elegant at explaining it, eloquent at explaining it. You know what to say, you know how to say it, and by the way, you show them your completed your presentation that we're creating for you, and you can show it to that prospective seller. You don't think that's going to win you the listing? Now you're sitting across the table from a prospective buyer. They're in town for one weekend and they want to buy the most expensive house in town. They're all cash, they're ready to rumble. Well, they're confused too. You're going to be able to explain to them why they want to work with you, all your unique selling propositions, all the different ways you're going to negotiate for them, all the different places you're going to look for homes, your resume, all the reasons why they're going to want to choose you. We've done it for you. Text the word buyer, B-U-Y-E-R, to 47372. We'll put you on the list. And remember, we're releasing this new program and expect to hear more about it as Julie and I hone it even sharper, I think, even make it better over the next few weeks. We're going to be talking about it every day because we're very excited about it. So text the word buyer, B-U-Y-E-R, to 47372, and you'll be on the list. And try to do this urgently. Yesterday we announced it. I think we had 40 or 50 people that texted in. And we're only going to be releasing this and making it available to purchase for the first 100 people. So, for example, if our list ends up being 200 or 300 people, that's probably going to be enough for 100 people to want to embrace this new program. So get on the list ASAP. All right, Julie, point number 10.
All right, mortgage market expectations. Here's the fact. Market expectations indicate potential rate cuts beginning in September, with still some optimism it could happen in August. So pay attention.
Yeah, we actually heard it's supposed to happen the first week in August.
Especially Housing Wire has been reporting as usual. A great job on that. Current odds for upcoming FOMC meetings show increasing probabilities for rate cuts. Again, good news for the buyers. Prediction: if rate cuts occur, mortgage rates may decrease, almost assuredly, potentially boosting home affordability and spurring buyer activity. Everything that I've listened to, I know you listen to a lot of the same podcasts and mortgage stuff that I do and economists. It seems that the consensus, anything that is 6 point something, anything sub 7%, and certainly the closer we get to 6.5%, will very much stimulate the mortgage market. And you'll see that immediately in mortgage applications.
There's two things ultimately are going to be weights against the market. And I know some people don't think this is an actual fact, but what I'm about to tell you is a fact, just look back into history. When there's a presidential election around October, November, generally speaking, home sales do drop off. It is what it is. But guess what? During October, November, home sales usually slow down anyway. So it's a little bit amplified by an election. And a lot of people, buyers, just like sellers will use the excuse, I'm going to put my house on the market till after the holidays. You're going to hear a lot of people that are going to say, for some reason, which makes no sense, I'm going to put my house for sale after the election, or I'm going to, purchase a house after the election. So that's a headwind. The other headwind is obviously this buyer agent commission thing. Those are the two things that we're all going to have to basically work around. But the tailwinds, the reasons to be optimistic, the ridiculous, huge in many markets increase in inventory, sellers' expectations about basically having to be more competitive, lowering interest rates, and frankly, there's such a huge pent-up demand. Julie and I have read all these, articles and whatnot. There are in some markets over a decade's worth of a lack of inventory, especially when it comes to new construction. In other words, it's going to take over 10 years for there to be enough new homes built and homes come to market to satisfy the pent-up demand for buyers that want to buy. You guys, you're in the right place at the right time. Don't believe the nasty, salacious, scary headlines. Just embrace the fact that you can make the most, helping the most in this market because there's this most consternation there's been in a long time. Be excited about that, because what most people are going to do is they're going to go to ground. They're going to, out of lack of fear, knowledge equals fear, or what is it? Ignorance equals fear, knowledge equals confidence. A lot of people are essentially backstroking in the pool of ignorance, and that's causing them more and more fear. Move past that, get out, towel off, and let's embrace the reality that the greatest fortunes of men and women have always been made during the greatest times of change, and you're right in the right place at the right time with a huge amount of change that's in the midst of happening in front of us over the next 90 days. Point number 11.
Point number 11, affordability and down payment assistance. We talked a lot about the average sale price going up, and we expect it to continue to appreciate or inflate. The fact is the number of down payment assistance programs has reached an all-time high. A lot of you don't know that. Again, this goes into your toolkit. More and more organizations are offering these programs and increasing the use of federal funds. I would expect to see even more of that happening, election year and all that. The prediction, enhanced affordability through more down payment assistance programs could boost home buyer participation, particularly amongst first-time buyers. And by the way, a lot of people don't realize first-time buyers, even with higher rates, are almost 50% of the purchases out there already. Imagine when the first-time buyer stuff, there's grants for down payments. There's all kinds of really cool programs. And when I was doing research on this, there's actually more than 1,000 different types of programs that are offered right now.
To Julie's point, if I were a loan officer and I were listening to this podcast, here's what I'd be doing. I sure as hell would be making sure I know how to do Fannie Freddie, and I was, was licensed to do Fannie Freddie loans. I don't think license is the right term, but you guys get the point. And I'd also become very elegant at explaining to buyer agents, realtors, go to their meetings, go to their offices, explain to them how the buyer can finance in the buyer agent commission. And then I would be learning the heck out of all the little special programs that Julie just talked about. And there are always little programs. There's sometimes, obviously the VA, obviously, what's the one for ag?
Oh, USAA?
Yeah. No, that's for military.
USDA.
USDA. Yeah.
Something
that's
like
it.
that.
USDA. Anyway, there's a lot of them.
There's tons of them.
But there's some that are just because, it's for firefighters or if it's for teachers.
Well, it could be not even to do with the buyer. Sometimes it's to do with the town or the area or the zip code. It could be an area of tax abatement for 2 or 3 years. What's cool about this, when I think about this, and I remember when we were doing a lot of our transactions, it's possible to combine these things, right?
Yep.
So you put your buyer agent commission on the top, you still have a concession where the seller's paying the home warranty. The buyer gets a down payment assistance program from somewhere. Maybe they match a 1.5% down, and they're given a grant for another 1.5%, so they can then buy at FHA with 3% down. There's nothing saying, and I know a lot of you listening are not used to dealing with that many tools at the same time on a transaction, but we're excited about it. First of all, we're thrilled. We have so much work in this, in the buyer.
It's probably taken us 2 years, honestly.
At least 2 years. But here's how I look at it. It's a great tool in your toolkit, but the headwinds are on your side because now buyers and sellers both need those tools. They need a caring professional agent like yourself. So get out of fear, get into action. Our job is to educate you, motivate you, and your job is to get into action. We're here to give you the tools so that you can take action faster and with more confidence.
Now, remember, if you want to get the notes from any of our podcasts, especially today's show, maybe use them for social, maybe use them for training yourself, maybe use them as an outline to create a video on YouTube or whatever. It's there available to you. Just go to harrisrealestatedaily.com. You do have to subscribe to the newsletter. Just go to harrisrealestatedaily.com and subscribe. It costs you nothing, and then you'll be getting a daily update of all of our newest outlines for all of our podcasts, as well as a lot of extra information. Now, on tomorrow's podcast, we're going to have that broker interview and with Holly, the broker of eXp Realty. She's, in charge of basically 90,000 agents, so she's probably going to be worth listening to, don't you think? So that's happening tomorrow. And then we're going to have an interview with one of the largest owners of a mortgage company. We're going to be talking about some of the things we talked about today. So a lot of good stuff coming your way that's going to keep you guys on the leading edge. So in conclusion, Julie.
In conclusion, as your real estate market continues to evolve in 2024, staying informed about these trends and predictions will help you navigate the complexities ahead. Whether you're a buyer, a seller, an agent, maybe you're a mortgage professional, understanding these dynamics can position you for success in this ever-changing landscape. I hope you guys are picking up on our enthusiasm. I hope that's how you feel too.
Well, definitely. And because, Julie, it's in markets like this, really what we've been experiencing for the last few years, but especially what's about to happen, frankly, that's when new leaders in the marketplace are actually, chosen by the marketplace.
For sure.
Because they're willing to do what other people, what their competitors don't know. I mean, imagine if you were in the, videotape business back in the day and you had a local mom and pop, videotape rental place. You guys, most of you remember that. And then all of a sudden there was this weird thing called downloads and streaming that started to come around. And maybe you were one of the, who's ever going to move past VHS? Everyone loves to be hassled with standing in line and getting late fees and all the rest of it. No one's ever going to want to stream a movie. Well, you guys are in the position right now to be Netflix. You're in the position right now to be the Netflix in your marketplace and have leading edge information that maybe your competitors don't see. They will see. You want to help them, let them know. So obviously real estate's all about, the real estate industry is always about cooperation. So do let them know about what you know from this podcast by sharing this podcast with them. Do please like and subscribe to the podcast. Send them a link. Let's work together to get the market informed as fast as possible so these changes actually don't really mean that much in terms of actually boots on the ground real estate transactions. You being in service to others is what this is all about. Thank you for keeping this podcast one of the most downloaded podcasts in the real estate industry. We appreciate your love and support for all these years. And please do remember, get your name on the list for this new program that we have coming out the end of August. Text the word BUYER, BUYER to 47372. Do that right away.